Jared Polin, Photos.com, and this is a quick tip that was brought up by a mistake that I made last week when shooting at Blog World. Now, I had to do this shot right here, or I was taking pictures of the founders, and I had them staggered a little bit, and I was shooting at f4. And if I didn't review my images after I took them to show them some of them, I wouldn't have realized until it was too late and we were done that this shot would not be usable, and you may not be able to notice it until we zoom in, but look at this. He is not in focus, but he is really sharp and in focus at f4. So my focus point was right on this guy over here. The problem is because Dave was closer to me and this subject was a little further back, it made it f4 not usable for getting both of them in focus. So Rick is in focus, Dave's out of focus, and this is a not usable shot. No matter what you do, no matter how much clarity you add, it is not going to be a usable shot. It's just not going to happen. If you miss it, it's out of focus, or in this case, it's not really out of focus. It's, well, I'm focused on Rick here, but at f4, it didn't give me enough room, being that they were staggered, for my hyperfocal distance to basically keep them both in focus. So when I reshot it, I went to f6.3 this time, and now that you can see Rick right here is sharp, and Dave right here is sharp as well. So the quick tip here is when you're shooting group shots or staggered subjects, don't make the mistake that I did because I wasn't thinking, I just messed up. Don't make the same mistake. It is okay to bump your aperture up higher because in this case, at 2.8, at 3.2, 3.5, f4, maybe f5 and 5.6, if they're staggered just slightly, one of them is going to be in focus and the other is not. And what you can see here is even though this one before is at f4, the background is blown out, it's separated, but you know what? It's not that much different here at 6.3. It's not as blurry, but it's not a distraction at all. So that is the quick tip, is if you're doing a group shot with multiple people and they're on different lengths, they're on different wavelengths, be sure to make sure that your aperture is bumped up a little higher so that you get more depth of field. Your depth of field expands. Where f4 is here, 6.3 expands it here, which means if one's in focus here and one's in focus here, or if they're inside this range, then they're going to be in focus. So be careful with that. Make sure you double check your images for things like this before you end your photo shoot, because if I did that, I wouldn't have gotten this picture right and gotten this good picture. I would have been stuck with this picture and trying to go, well, one of you's the out of focus guy and the other's in focus. I'm sorry. That doesn't work with two co-founders. So there you have it. That's a quick tip. And let me just give you a little bit of bonus information while we're at it on top of that. So what do you have to do when you bump your aperture to 6.3 from f4? You're cutting down on the amount of light you're letting in. Cause and effect. If you're cutting down on light that you're letting in, this was 1/400th of a second. This was 1/800th of a second. So it was a quicker shutter speed because a lot more light was being let in. In this case, I went to 6.3, less light, have to slow the shutter speed down, have to either bump the ISO to compensate for that. So all of these things have to happen. When you cut down on the amount of light, 6.3, so 4 was something like this, 6.3 closed down even more, maybe not that much, but you can get it. If this was 4, and this was 6.3, you can see that it's letting less light in. You have to compensate for it. That's your quick tip. Jared Polin, Photos.com. See ya. Don't forget to sign up for the Fronos Photo email list. You will receive a free photo guide to capturing motion in low light, as well as a 60-minute long flash photography video. But on top of that, there's exclusive content that only goes to people on the email list. For example, today, when I recorded this video, I sent out an email with tips for making money with photography. Now that is information that's only going to go to people on the email list, so be sure to put your name and email address in this box, hit send it, and you will get yourself on the email list.